We like to think of science as a noble quest for truth, conducted by brilliant people in clean lab coats. But what happens when that quest goes off the rails? What happens when curiosity becomes cruelty? Well, buckle up, because you're about to discover the dark, twisted underbelly of psychology. These aren't just unethical experiments, these are ideas so profoundly messed up, they make you question the sanity of the scientists themselves. This is what happens when for the greater good goes horribly, horribly wrong. In 1939, a psychologist named Wendell Johnson wanted to know what causes stuttering. A reasonable question. His method? Not so reasonable. He went to an orphanage, yes, an orphanage, and separated the children into two groups. To one group, he gave constant praise and positive speech therapy. To the other group of perfectly normal speaking kids, he unleashed a campaign of psychological warfare. He told them their speech was defective, that they were beginning to stutter, that they should never speak unless they could do it perfectly. He relentlessly belittled and criticized every single word out of their mouths. The goal was to see if he could induce a stutter in a healthy child. And the result? It worked. Several of the children stopped speaking altogether. Others developed severe, lifelong speech and psychological problems. They weren't subjects in an experiment, they were victims. And the cruelest part? The experiment was hidden for decades, buried to avoid tarnishing the university's reputation. Johnson got his PhD, and the children got a lifetime of trauma. If you thought that was bad, let me introduce you to Harry Harlow, a psychologist who apparently wanted to win a Nobel Prize in sadism. Harlow wanted to study depression. So he decided to create it from scratch, in monkeys. He built what he himself called the pit of despair. It was a tiny, steel-walled, cone-shaped chamber. A baby monkey was placed inside, alone, in total darkness, for up to 10 weeks. There was no escape, no comfort, no contact. It was a sensory deprivation chamber designed to break a living creature's mind. When the monkeys were finally let out, they were, to use a scientific term, completely shattered. They were catatonic. They stared blankly, refused to eat, and huddled in corners, rocking back and forth. They never recovered. Harlow had successfully proven that profound isolation creates profound, irreversible depression. He created misery for misery's sake, turning his lab into a real-life horror movie, all to prove something that anyone with a shred of empathy already knew. Now, let's leave the universities and head over to the CIA, where things get truly diabolical. In the 1950s, at the height of the Cold War, the CIA launched Project MKUltra. The official goal, mind control. The unofficial goal, see what happens when you dose unsuspecting American citizens with massive amounts of LSD. This wasn't an experiment, it was a state-sponsored acid trip from hell. CIA agents would pick up random men at bars, take them to a brothel, and then, without their knowledge, slip LSD into their drinks. They would then sit behind a two-way mirror, sipping cocktails, and taking notes while the man's reality completely dissolved. They tested it on soldiers, students, and even their own agents. One scientist, Frank Olson, was secretly dosed, had a psychotic breakdown, and fell from a 13th-story window 9 days later. The CIA called it a suicide for decades before being forced to admit what they'd done. They were trying to build a Manchurian candidate, but what they actually built was a legacy of paranoia, death, and one of the most terrifying ethical breaches a government has ever committed against its own people. From tormenting orphans to government-sponsored acid trips, this wasn't just bad science. It's a terrifying window into the darkness humans are capable of in the name of knowledge. It proves that sometimes the most important question isn't what can we discover, but what lines should we never, ever cross? A question these scientists either never asked or didn't care to answer.